Welcome back to Bad Things in History. This week, after simplifying the complexities of the Great Schism, we bring you a juicy tale of mass murder and heresy. Buckle up tight. For many people, religion is an important part of daily life. Belief and devotion to God is an important concern for the chosen few who claim to know the fate of their eternal soul. For those who oversee religious institutions, it is expected that they will help believers find salvation. But not all of them are up to the task. Today we are going to tell you the story of how the church in Greece failed to stop a nun who tortured, killed, and stole from her congregation. Christianity in the East. Christianity split into factions almost as soon as the Roman Empire collapsed in 476. The territories that were once part of the Western Empire became Roman Catholic, but the Eastern Empire continued practicing Christianity in its own way. Despite their differences, Christians in the former Roman territories shared a common belief system, but in the year 1054, the disagreements between East and West became unsurmountable. Christians in Rome believed that the Pope was the center of the church, and as he was chosen by God, the Pope was also infallible. Believers in Eastern Europe did not recognize his authority, nor did they think God was responsible for selecting him. Christians in the East eventually split from Roman Catholics and became the Eastern Orthodox Church. The center of Eastern Christianity was originally in Constantinople. When the Ottoman Empire invaded in 1453, much of what had been Christian territory fell under the control of Muslim rulers. Despite the occupation, some parts of the Eastern Orthodox Church survived and thrived. This included Christian churches in Greece, which could operate independently within the Ottoman Empire. For the next several centuries, people of Greek descent spread throughout territories in Asia. Many of them lived and worked in Turkey, but as World War I approached in 1914, religious tolerance would come to an end. For the next 8 years, people of Greek descent would be hunted throughout Turkey. When caught, the victims were deported to Greece if they were fortunate. Torture, mutilation, and death were also common fates for Greeks in Turkish territory. The event became known as the Greek Genocide. The genocide would continue until 1922. During the years that it raged, the Turkish government killed and deported thousands of Greek Christians. Eventually, Turkey reached a population relocation agreement with Greece. Greek citizens had to leave Turkey, and Turkish citizens had to leave Greece. After years of war, persecution, and finally genocide, the Orthodox Church in Greece was in complete disarray. It wouldn't take long for one influential priest to insist on regime change. The disregard of timekeeping. The clergy of the Greek Orthodox Church realized that they seriously disagreed on a very important detail. The unresolved dispute threatened to split the church in two. The problem was they couldn't agree on which calendar to use. When the Eastern Orthodox Church split from the Roman Catholic Church, both institutions used the Julian calendar. This had been created by Julius Caesar about 45 years before the birth of Christ. The problem with the Julian calendar is that it didn't take leap years into account, so over time the dates stopped matching the seasons. The Roman Catholic Church addressed this in 1582 by adopting the Gregorian calendar. The Eastern Orthodox Church did not change its calendar to match the one used by Rome, but in 1923 a committee decided it was time to enter the modern world. They developed the revised Julian calendar. This modified dates so that they mostly agreed with the Gregorian calendar. Some of the more conservative members of the church refused to accept this change. They were going to keep using the original Julian calendar no matter what the church committee declared. This group became known as the Calendarists. Among them was Bishop Matthew Karpathakis. He would soon leave to start his own church, but he wouldn't have to do it alone. The Monastery. Mariam Soulakiotis was born in 1883 in Keratea, Greece. Not much is known about her early life. Supposedly she worked in factories as a young woman. Then she became a farm laborer. When Mariam was about 18 years old, she became a nun in the Greek Orthodox Church. Around 1906, she met Matthew Karpathakis. His approach to the teachings of Christ was very appealing to Mariam. After the revised Julian calendar was adopted in 1923, Matthew decided to start his own church. Mariam was more than willing to go with him. It isn't clear how she did it, but in 1925, Mariam secured several acres of land. In 1927, both she and Matthew left the Greek Orthodox Church and created their own convent and monastery. According to Matthew, the new church existed for several reasons. First and foremost, it was a place to worship God, but it would also financially support others that favored the original Julian calendar. Furthermore, since the new monastery was in the mountains, it would provide free treatment to tuberculosis patients. In the years before antibiotics were available, it was believed that cool mountain air helped keep the disease in check. When the new monastery was finally opened, Matthew was already an old man at 66 years old, so he allowed Mariam to handle most of the day-to-day responsibilities. Over the next 12 years, as his health declined, she began making all the decisions. When Matthew's health took a sharp downturn in 1939, Mariam began acting as the sole authority for the new church. As the leader, she made it clear that the church was now very focused on financial investments. One of the main ways that Mariam added funds to the coffers was by enforcing a vow of poverty. New members of the monastery were required to give all their belongings to the church, and anyone who didn't agree was eventually forced into compliance. For the next 10 years, Mariam's approach to the church terrified locals. It was also very profitable. Reign of Terror. Mariam had a well-organized system for bringing new members into her church. First, a network of nuns scoured the countryside looking for vulnerable people. In addition to being ripe for fraud, there was another important requirement for potential recruits. They had to come from wealthy families. Members of wealthy families would agree to join the church for a variety of reasons. Some were sick and thought that being treated at the monastery might help. Others were simply concerned about having a fruitful relationship with the Almighty. Regardless of how they found their way to Mariam, the new recruits followed a similar process. First, they had to vow to rid themselves of evil and confess all sins. After this was complete, the new member of the church was welcomed, but contact with old friends and family was not allowed. Breaking existing relationships made the next stage of the process much easier. Next, Mariam would require the recruit to sign over their property and bank accounts. To ensure this happened, she would force them to pray for hours and hours every day. Additionally, sleep deprivation and starvation were used to motivate the target to comply. For new initiates that were sick, the harsh treatment often resulted in death. When this happened, Mariam might tell the person's family. Most of the time, she would just bury the bodies and move on to the next target. No matter what punishments or requests were made of the new converts, the monastery had a strict requirement of silence. People were not allowed to speak to each other, and if they broke this rule, the punishment was being hit in the face with a shoe. Residents in nearby villages claimed they could hear screams coming from the monastery every night. Although this went on for nearly a decade, authorities seemed unconcerned. One evening, two drunk men decided to see what was going on. They jumped the wall of the monastery and found an elderly woman who was in chains. She was emaciated and clearly suffered from malnutrition. When they asked if she wanted help, the woman said no. She needed to endure the torture to save her eternal soul. News of Mariam and her strange church would eventually spread beyond local villages. Once the truth was known, authorities in Greece would no longer be able to ignore it. The Raid and Trial. Mariam's schemes began to finally fall apart in 1949. Years of greed and corruption started to finally draw unwanted attention. In 1949, a woman joined the church and cut off all contact with her family. Then she signed over the family estate and all its holdings to Mariam. The woman's daughter found out about it and was furious. She contacted the police and told them her mother would never do something like that. They started investigating but did not act immediately. A specific event finally pushed Mariam's misdeeds squarely into the spotlight. Simela Spirides was an 18-year-old woman from Toledo, Ohio. In 1949, she visited Greece as a tourist and never returned home. Simila's family contacted authorities, claiming they couldn't find their daughter and she was last seen in Mariam's monastery. Simila did eventually talk to her family and let them know she was alive. However, authorities were now under pressure to figure out what was happening in this strange church. On the night of December 4th, 1950, more than 85 police officers arrived at the monastery. They began searching the grounds. In the beginning, authorities focused on rescuing victims that were found scattered throughout the area. First, they took 46 children away from the nuns and sent them to other orphanages. As the police continued to search the monastery, they found another troubling sight. There were several elderly, malnourished women randomly located throughout the property. The most troubling discovery was the remains of 170 bodies buried in graves that had been dug all over the church grounds. As investigators continued trying to figure out what happened, they learned that Mariam was very efficient at taking property from those who suffered from illness. When someone who was sick arrived at the monastery, she would withhold treatment until they signed over all property to the church. Then, instead of providing medicine, Mariam would just let the person die. The only time doctors ever visited the church was to fill out death certificates. When police arrested her, Mariam had the equivalent of $750,000 worth of cash on her. She also held the deeds to nearly 300 properties. As she sat in jail awaiting trial, prosecutors had problems figuring out how to charge Mariam. Because the people who suffered and died under her care volunteered, it was difficult to claim that she killed them. So they instead focused on a lesser crime. She was charged with illegally importing tires and illegally exporting olive oil. The sentence was 26 months. Mariam never showed any concern for her fate. She maintained her innocence throughout the trials, saying that the accusations were nothing more than satanic fiction. As she sat in prison, the investigation continued. In February 1953, Mariam was charged with 4 murders, as well as embezzlement, torture, extortion, and several other crimes. By the time prosecutors were finished, she was condemned to serve more than 14 years in confinement. She would never receive her full punishment. On November 23, 1954, Mariam Soulakiotis died at the age of 71. The Greek government outlawed the calendarist movement. However, the nuns that served under Mariam refused to give up their faith. They disappeared before authorities could find them. A representative of the Greek Ministry of Justice said in 1951, "The women are socially dangerous crackpots and have been very clever in giving us the runaround. But one day they'll make a slip, as all criminals usually do, and we will catch them. Those crazy females claim that they will someday go to heaven, but if we meet up with them, we'll show them what hell is like first." Despite Greek authorities promising to catch them, the nuns were never found. If there's a moral to this story, and really there isn't, it's that meaningless arguments can escalate into torture and death without warning. This is especially true if religion is involved. What do you think about this troubling story? Was Mariam an exceptionally evil person? Or was she just a common criminal who let things go too far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this episode interesting, then please be nice and do something in return. Hit the like button and let YouTube know that we don't suck. And subscribe to our channel if you want to see more stories like this in the future. Thank you for watching Bad Things in History.